Welcome to Born on the Bayou Sports, a Houston sports show made for Houstonians by Houstonians. Join Tim Costello and Scott Barzilla every week as they break down the latest in Houston Astros, Rockets, and Texans news. Tim's a former minor league broadcaster, and Scott has written 2 books on the Baseball Hall of Fame. Yeah, if Javier could get it figured out, it would make things a lot easier because he was that guy everybody was counting on this year to be a Cy Young candidate, take that big step forward and help anchor this rotation with Framber.
Since he's come to Houston, you can look at the development of guys like Carlos Correa defensively, Jeremy Pena defensively. I mean, you can Alex Bregman's, certainly I think a better than average third baseman.
And now you're putting teams in 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 9. Now here comes Will Anderson. Pin back your ears, let's go. So if you're Bayou born and bred, or just like spending time in the H, sit down, relax, and stay Houston strong. Welcome back into another episode of Born on the Bayou Sports. Tim Costello joined with the one, the only Scott Barzilla. Scott, we're new look goofing again here.
Yeah, I don't know how many podcasts. This one is, you always come back and you're like, man, do I sound like that? Now I've got to add on the, man, do I look like that? It's a humbling experience, Tim.
Yeah, it's certainly different when you get to see yourself, you get to hear yourself. It's a lot of new looks for you, I guess. I don't know. It's a lot to take in, I guess, if you're Scott Barzilla.
It is, and I know if you're anything like me, Tim, you're getting spring fever here in late February. The Astros obviously haven't played any exhibition games yet, but there's certainly, been quite a bit of talk out there in Florida.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You and I have both talked a fair amount about Astros spring training already. It's a lot going on, right? We've talked already, Justin Verlander's behind schedule. J.P. France is behind schedule. Lance McCullers may be ahead of schedule. Josh Hader's facing live batters. Jeremy Pena's got a new and improved batting stance. Alex Bregman says he's never been in better shape when showing up to camp. There's a rumor that Kyle Tucker's extension has possibly, begun to be discussed. There's a lot of balls in the air for being just the first week of spring training right now.
Yeah, I always take the the statements about people being in the best shape of their lives with a grain of salt. I don't know if you remember last spring, but Jeremy Pena showed up jacked. I mean, that guy looked like he was ready to hit 30 bombs with the way, the pictures, and everybody takes those pictures that, right at the right angle. It makes him look like, like he's Willie Mays Hayes in Major League 2, ready to hit more bombs. And of course, that didn't end up being the case, in either instance. So new and improved batting stance. I'll go new batting stance. We'll have to see if it's improved.
Yeah, it's still obviously too early to tell if it's going to make that difference, but we certainly hope it does. And it's still early in spring training, but he did have some live ABs against Ryan Presley, and he put some good wood on the baseball last year. Pena didn't have a problem hitting the ball hard. If you look at his exit velo, it was actually up from the year before. The strikeouts were down. The batting average was up. He had a problem elevating the ball. Jeremy Pena had trouble hitting the ball into the air. A lot of hard hit ground balls, a lot of line drives. He did not hit the towering, high arcing homers or even the pop-ups to left field that sometimes with the Crawford boxes become home runs. He just didn't hit those last year. So he said he credits a lot of what he's doing to Michael Brantley and just trying to keep that bat flatter and less movement, but still active is kind of what he said.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping, and I get a little bit nervous because I like the progression I saw from him last year overall as a hitter. He was striking out less often. He's taking more walks. That's really what you wanted to see. And so, I was kind of hoping that we would just kind of see that trajectory keep moving, for him. And that's the hope. And something like 25 home runs or 20 home runs to me is way, I certainly think it's possible. I think he's got the strength to do it, but that's not, the direction I necessarily want to see him going.
Exactly. I think if we could get 12 to 15 home runs and 265, 270, and 25, 30 doubles and 25, 30 stolen base, I'd rather a much well-rounded shortstop. At the end of the day, if this lineup is what we think it's going to be, he's hitting seventh or eighth. Do you really Can you really predict a seventh or eighth hitter to hit 20, 25 home runs? And that's not realistic. There's not many teams in baseball who have that. At the end of the day, if he's a 270, 275 hitter who does a lot of things really well once he's on base and he's in that eighth hole, maybe even that ninth hole, that's a pretty valuable guy when he plays the level of defense that Jeremy Pena plays.
Yeah, so if you're looking at the guys who showed up to camp, I mean, obviously, you sent some pictures my way. Who were you most encouraged to see just to look at?
Ah, I think Framber's a big one for me. I think he's in better shape than he was last year. I think that he's in a big spot here trying to pitch for either a free agency or a long-term contract extension. So I think him showing up the way that he did looks like he's in unbelievable shape. He's down, it looks like 10, maybe even 15 pounds from where he was last year. He looks slim. He looks fantastic. Framber, everyone talks about Christian Javier as the difference maker on this team, whether he has a bounce back here or not. To me, it's Framber. If Framber goes back to 2022 Framber, where he's a legitimate ace of a staff, I'd say we're in pretty good position. If he goes back to last year, where you literally do not know what you're going to get from Framber Valdez every 5 days, whether it's a no hitter or you get banged around for 5 or 6 runs because the cutter ain't cutting or the sinker ain't sinking. I can't have that, right? I want the Framber who pounds you low and in and just you hit the ball into the dirt and he gets 6, 7, 8 innings because everybody just swings and grounds out all the time and he's not throwing a ton of pitches. We need that guy. We need a guy who saves the bullpen. So to me, that's going to be the most important player and the most encouraging guy, at least just the way he looks so far.
Yeah, and actually, he was that guy through the All-Star break. It was really after the All-Star break last year where the wheels just kind of came off, with the exception of that, that no hitter. He was really, I mean, that after the All-Star break. And one of the things you have to wonder, and I heard some people talking about this on the radio, so I can't take credit for this, but you have to wonder, with the advent of the pitch clock, does that put an increased emphasis on conditioning? Because you can't walk around the mound, you can't massage the ball, you can't catch a breath. I mean, you have to take that ball and keep chucking it. And so with him losing that weight, and I haven't seen any pictures of Javier, but I'm hoping that he's in better shape too, physically. Maybe that's the difference, particularly when you get into the dog days of July, August, and September.
Yeah, I mean, this team was in the World Series in 2021. They were in the World Series in 2022, and last year then the ALCS. Like, exhaustion has to come into it at some point too, right? Like, obviously, these guys had a lot of innings on them, and the wear and tear aspect is real. I'm not trying to make excuses for, pardon me, for anybody, but at the end of the day, that adds up. Those innings add up. So not even an early bow out last year, but even not being in the World Series, you hope maybe, hey, guys are a little bit fresher, coming in great shape, a little bit pissed off because your division rival ends up winning the World Series. Corey Seager's out there talking about how, the Astros and Alex Bregman's, what are they going to do with the Astros to win the division speech is the reason the Rangers got propelled to the World Series. For those of you who are counting at home, that's like number 2 or 3 maybe, because at first it was when we made fun of them for how they celebrated the wild card. Then it was Creed, and now it's Alex Bregman's speech. So they had a lot of motivation going for them there in Arlington.
Yeah. So Alex Bregman is a guy on the other end. He put on 23 pounds over the winter. I'm not so sure how I feel about that. On the positive end, he's been a guy that's actually lost weight during the season. That
Yeah, you're back, Scott. Not sure what happened there. You kind of cut out a little bit, but you're saying he
oh
loses weight during the season typically.
yeah, he loses weight during the season, but the thing is when guys try to bulk up, you run the risk of getting those muscle pulls and strains that keep a guy on the shelf for periods of the year.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you on that. But he doesn't look too big, right? I think maybe he did it the right way. We'll see as time comes, but he's kind of going into that free agent year. Um, this is when guys mash, right? Like if you look at guys you go and get paid, they hit 35, 40 home runs their walk year. And I'm wondering if maybe Bregman thought, hey, I'm in my final year of this contract. If we don't get a deal done, I need to have as good a year as possible. Nothing gets you paid like the long ball. Let's throw a little extra muscle on, and we're going to hit more homers. At the end of the day, Bregman hits a lot of line drives, and if those line drives get out, I'm all for it. I don't think that plate discipline's going anywhere. He's still got, I don't. Is it fair to say a top 5 eye in baseball? If you have
Yeah.
to have it, a good at bat. I'm not going to say get a hit or whatever, but if your season relies on having a good at bat, Alex Bregman's one of the top choices to send up there and know he's not going to get cheated. He's not going to chase a bad pitch. So those things with added muscle and with the caveat, as you said, as long as he stays healthy, that could be a nice big season for Mr. Bregman. Back in that MVP conversation for the first time since 2019.
Yeah, and as things go by the day, I'm becoming less and less optimistic that they get something done. Because you notice how, right after Altuve signed, it was okay, now it's Bregman. Now these things seem to be moving on to Tucker. So I don't know. I don't know if you saw what Spock Track's projection was for him.
For
You
Tucker or
want
for
to you
Bregman?
for Bregman.
It's going to be 300. It's 10-300, somewhere around there.
No, you're close. It's 9,281.
Yeah. So
I mean,
if Bregman
do you
signs
feel like
long,
giving that to him?
no. Because if Bregman signs long term, there has to be some sort of consideration on his part that I like Houston, I want to stay here. Because even, Altuve said it loud and clear, right? He took less money to stay here. He's still getting paid well. Don't get me wrong, the man is not hurting for cash, but he's getting paid well. He took a little bit of a pay cut and he stayed home. Kyle Tucker has essentially hinted he's willing to do the same thing. Nothing is done yet, but he has said I love playing in Houston. I love contending every single year. Why wouldn't I want to stay here? I'm in the process of talking about an extension. So again, that has to come with the caveat of there's going to be a little bit of a discount for that you want to stay in contention for the length of this contract. That has to be the conversation in these rooms is we're going to sign all of you with the caveat that you understand you could all go out and you could make more money and you can sign a big ass deal with the Washington Nationals and then you'll never make the playoffs again. Or you can take a little bit less money, you can stay home, you can play with Yordan Alvarez, you can play with Yainer Diaz, you can play with Framber, you can play with Javier, you can play with Luis Garcia, you can play with all this young talent that we have, and you can still contend. Those are kind of the options, right? And there has to be some sort of consideration on the player's part for I want to play contending baseball. I want to be well paid, and you will be well paid, but maybe you're not the number one paid position player at your position, but you're contending for World Series year in and year out. That's got to be the ultimate goal.
Yeah, and I did the comps on him compared to all the third basemen. He was sitting in around 29 million was where I pegged him. And that's obviously 281 over 9 is north of that. So what that means is that he's getting Manny Machado money, which I think was stupid money, for the Padres. I mean, now you look at the Padres, I mean, right now he's projected to be a DH. So, what are we doing paying that guy 30 plus million? So, Tucker, who's his agent, by the way?
I'm not sure actually. Let me see here for you, Scott.
Because we know Bregman is a Boris client. We know Altuve is a Boris client. We know that the top 5 free agents still left on the board are all Boris clients. And this is the thing. You have to know. You have to know for a fact that Dana Brown, Jim Crane, anybody else who's sitting in the room saying, "Hey, how much are you thinking on a Tucker contract? What do you think? Well, if he's a Boris client, what are you thinking on a Bregman contract?" And so, if he's thinking north of 30 million, that's no.
No, I'm with you. It's too much. That's too much money. You can't pay all these guys, right? At some point, the piper comes due, and you've got to let somebody walk. They've let everybody walk at this point, though. They did get the deal done with Jordan, and I appreciate that, and I'm thankful for that. But you signed Christian
But
Javier.
like you said, well, but both those guys were below market value signings, as you pointed out with Altuve. And we've had this conversation with the Rockets, which we don't want to talk about too much tonight because it's too. We talked about making trades for a max contract guy. The problem is that you get that max contract guy, then all of a sudden you're looking at your roster for the next 3 to 4 seasons, and it's going to be the same with the Astros. If you sign both Bregman and Tucker, maybe even just one, this might be your core moving forward. And and this core is getting older.
I mean, I think the core, if you get Tucker signed, the core is Jordan and Tucker, and fingers crossed, Pena and Diaz, right? Like that's your core. Um, I think Altuve is a star for 4 or 5 more years, at least for output. I I don't. Maybe I'm a homer. I don't know. I really think maybe his last few years kind of play out like Biggio's. Biggio was still a productive player there at the end, but he wasn't all star level quick Biggio. Or maybe he hits 250 with 20 homers. He hits for a little bit more pop, but a little less base hits, things like that. Or maybe it goes the other way for Altuve and he loses the pop, but he still gets base hits, and maybe he's more like an Ichiro, where he's more of a slap hitter as he goes down. But I think Altuve is enough of a competitor. He'll find a way to be competitive through a majority of that contract. Maybe the last year or two isn't amazing. But yeah, I think the core at this point, if you get Tucker, your core is Jordan and Kyle. You've got those two set for a long time. And possibly Yiner and Pena. You have a decision coming on Chaz that if you think he's a guy that you want to commit to for the long term, there's another guy that you can build around and say these are the guys that are for sure's. Everything else we can find a way to get better around the margins. Because I don't think Christian Javier is that guy. I wish, looking back on it now, if you were going to extend one of the two, it should have been Framber, right?
Yeah, but Framber was going to be more expensive. I mean, we know that. And I think, you're right on the money in saying that Tucker is a better long-term bet than Bregman is. But no matter what you think of Altuve, the money has been outlaid over the next 5 years. And once Pena and Diaz and McCormick, when they start getting closer to that, the end of their arbitration years, there's a lot of tough decisions you're going to have to make. I think they have the money there to bring those guys all back. But then the question then becomes, what do you have left in the tank to go out and get a missing piece that you might feel you need down the road?
No, you're absolutely right. We have a little bit of a depleted farm system. You don't have those top upper level prospects anymore after going to get Verlander. You're near the tax threshold as it is. You're above the first level. You're near the second level. But at the same time, you've got a owner who said he's committed to winning, and as long as he is here, there's not going to be a down period or anything like that. So that also highly encouraging, but does kind of come into it too. Of if the right guy is there mid-season, I'm going to choose to believe that Jim Crane's going to be willing to spend to get the guy and get this team to make it better. There's nothing in his history of ownership to show me that he's not willing in the middle of a year to go out and get the best name on the market to improve this baseball team. In 2017, he went and got Verlander. In 2018, they traded for Cole. In 2019, they traded for Zach Greinke. They've traded for Verlander again to get him back when you felt like you needed pitching. Every time this team has needed a boost at the trade market, Jim Crane's went out and got the best option available.
Yeah, you just got to wonder if we have the bullets left, and that's and that's kind of the whole thing. I think that Crane's willingness to spend cannot absolutely cannot be called into question. I mean, the payroll's gone up. We're over 200. We're well over 200 million now. I mean, we're in the top 5 in baseball. For a market our size, I mean, that's right about where they should be. So looking on the guy the big 5 that are on the board still, I had really 2 questions for you. Number one, like, do you see any of those, dropping their price enough for Houston to go get them? But number 2, is having that many big names still on the board pushing March good for baseball?
I mean, the answer is good for baseball is no, right? Because these are guys that can come in and impact teams. You've got the reigning Cy Young Award winner not signed, and I get it. He's got some outside issues besides last year's numbers that make you question whether he's worth the numbers he's asking for. But at this point, the fact that he hasn't signed like a deal that Correa signed his first one with the Twins, that was like a 3-year deal with an opt out after the first year, it's insane to me that these guys are essentially risking injury at this point, right, Scott? Because now you're gonna eventually sign, and it's probably gonna be like late February, maybe early March at that point. Now you've got a shortened spring. Then maybe you stay behind a little bit, and now all of a sudden something's tight when you finally get to the big club and you don't get to contribute. And this is what happened to Dallas Keuchel when he left the Astros. He didn't sign until midway into the season with the Braves. And he just was never been the same since he's left Houston. And I do believe a part of that is sitting out. It's not good for athletes to sit out long periods of time. Deshaun Watson has never been the same after he sat out. It's a different sport, but still, sitting out healthy is not good for your mental state, and there's no way to stay fresh outside of game reps. So I don't think it's good for baseball to have guys that can be contributing sitting there, doing nothing, not working. And possibly it's because they're asking for too much money. A lot of teams have used the lack of TV money, especially the Rangers, as a reason why they haven't gone out and spent the way they have previously. I don't know. Maybe we're at a tipping point here, Scott, where this is kind of going to force Major League Baseball's hand on streaming because teams are legitimately, quote unquote, hurting, as they're saying, and not signing. Again, the Cy Young winner has remained unsigned. If that can't tip the scales towards streaming because they're not making enough money, I don't know what else is.
Yeah, and I don't know when this happened. I'm trying to maybe you can refresh my memory, but there was one year where there was a lot of free agents that hadn't signed. well into March. And so Major League Baseball actually set up a camp for them. Maybe it was the agents that set up a camp for them. Maybe that's something that they could, look at doing on a full-time basis where, right around February 15th, if you're not signed, you're reporting to, Light My Fart Arkansas, or I don't know, uh, whatever, Dr. Bumfuzzle, Florida, and you're working out, with in a major league camp. Maybe you're actually playing live spring games, and so at least you can keep fresh because, like you said, the idea of signing a pillow contract has got to be frightening right now if you're Blake Snell, because I mean you sign a 1 year deal. Yeah, I don't know how you get ramped up by April 1st. I don't know how you pull that off. So, Major League Baseball maybe needs to step up and say, okay, we're going to set up a camp for you guys so at least you can work out under, supervision of, some experienced coaches, and maybe you can go in and pitch a few innings, and you can take some live at bats and maybe keep yourself fresh. So, I mean, I don't know. Is there any of the five? So I think Blake Snell, I think, is well out of our price range. I don't think JD Martinez is a position fit. And then Matt Chapman, obviously, you got Bregman at third. So that leaves you Jordan Montgomery or Cody Bellinger. What would the price have to drop to for you to consider them?
I think for Montgomery, I'd want one of those at this point, like a one. I'd sign him for like a 1 year, $20 million deal. But it wouldn't even be as much about the price as much about the years. I don't want him for more than a year right now. I would want him on kind of like a Wade Miley kind of deal, where we just picked up a guy for a year and kind of ride it out, just because we have so much up in the air for next season. Montgomery had a great playoff run, but outside of that, he's been a pretty, is it fair to say, average MLB pitcher? Nothing amazing. He's had some good years. He's had some okay years, but he's not a guy that's gonna save your rotation. Yes, again, he got hot in the playoffs, and that happens to guys, and guys get paid because of that. But it also seems like teams have maybe realized their mistakes in the past, and they're not handing out huge, giant mega contracts because guys had a great playoff run. So at the end of the day, I think 1 year, 15, 20 million, somewhere in that range, I'd take a shot. But again, I don't even think I don't want him. I really don't. If we're gonna add another starter, a name you didn't mention and one we've talked about before is, and I hate that I'm going there, but I think Trevor Bauer is a guy that you have to look at this point. I understand clubhouse fit. I understand all that other stuff, but you got a guy who's willing to prove it on a major league minimum deal with incentives. If he's not a fit, cut him after spring training and move on. But at the end of the day, this is a guy who has won a Cy Young award. He, since it was wrongfully accused of some, sexual inappropriateness, and he still has been played in Japan. Based on what I've seen on his YouTube channel, his stuff still looks pretty good. I know it comes with a whole lot of other stuff when you sign a guy like Bauer, but at the end of the day, when you've got a 98-mile-an-hour heater and pretty good breaking stuff off of it, and you're still sitting out there and you're waving your hands saying, I'll pitch for the major league minimum, how do you at least not bring that guy in for a tryout?
Yeah, you know what, I with Montgomery, with Bauer, with all those guys. I don't know if you saw like that Brandon Woodruff just signed a 2 year deal. That's where I'd go with those guys, and because what you're basically doing, and you see those deals all the time when guys are like recovering from Tommy John, and so basically the first year is like for peanuts, and so you're basically signing them for the second year. And so with Montgomery, I might go 2 years, 30 million, or maybe 2 years, 25 million, and have like the first year be like 7 or 8 million. And so basically telling them, hey, if you need until May 1st to get ready, go ahead, take till May 1st. We don't need you for the first month. And I think the same is going to be true with Trevor Bauer. Now, you mentioned the idea, do you pitch Trevor Bauer in relief? If you pitch Trevor Bauer in relief, he can easily get ready by April 1st. I mean, you don't have to get that ramped up as a reliever, but I would want him in the rotation. He would fit right in that kind of that number 3 slot, behind a healthy JV who just turned 41 today. Happy birthday, Justin. And a healthy Framber. He would, he would make it that much, better for Christian Javier, where Christian Javier doesn't have to shoulder the load. He turns back into a 4th or 5th starter, which is, I think, where, the best thing you could do for him is say, hey, just go ahead and give us 5. And I think, that's the best thing you could do for, and him and Hunter Brown both. Hey, just go ahead and give us 5. I don't care about clubhouse culture as much. There's too much baseball history. The 1970s A's were an absolute mess. Absolute mess. They won 3 World Series in a row. The Yankees from the late 70s, absolute mess. Billy Martin, Reggie Jackson at each other's throats constantly. They win back-to-back World Series in 77, 78. So, I don't know. I think maybe talking to the veterans to see what they think, but I don't give a shit about, about culture. Winning's culture. But that's just me. That's probably the fan in me talking.
I'm kind of with you. I'm one of those guys who, like, winning cures everything, right? And if it's on the player coming in to buy into what that team does and assimilate to their culture. And again, with a guy like Bauer, he's on a major league. If you get him on a major league minimum deal, if he doesn't do that, cut his ass. It's a major league minimum deal. And he has literally said on Twitter multiple times, if I'm not a fit, cut me. I don't care. Just give me a shot. And again, I'm not a Trevor Bauer fan. I think he's a douche. But he's kind of one of those guys that the talent is there. And it's just intriguing. It makes you wonder, could we buy low on this guy and get him this year and ride that low price tag for a lot of value, and then if he walks next year, he walks, whatever. But you got a good year out of him.
Yeah, and I think the thing is that you have enough veteran leadership on this club to make that work. You got a Justin Verlander that I don't think would have any problem with anything, saying, hey, cut the shit. Get your ass in line.
I'm with you.
I mean, I think a team like, say, the Reds, that might be a little iffy. Because I don't know if they have the veteran leadership with the Stones, to tell that guy, where to go. But I think, we have enough veteran leadership here to make that work.
Absolutely. I think this club is the kind that can bring guys in, embrace them. There's always those certain teams that are able to do those reclamation projects, right? Because they have just such a good clubhouse vibe and they've got great veterans and they can surround you and get it going. And, the Seahawks in the NFL are a team like that where they bring guys in and they've got a great culture. At least they did in the past. Maybe not as much right now, but, the Patriots did it in their years as well. They brought guys in who maybe had bad reputations or some things that happened, like, Dante Stallworth, Randy Moss, things like that. Ravens as well. Ray Lewis, legitimate murderer, goes on to have a long NFL career. So, yeah, I mean...
Alleged.
No, based on the podcast that my wife's listening to right now, it looks like he held the guy while he was stabbed. So, yeah, a lot more involved than alleged. But, I mean, hey, I digress. Don't want to be sued.
Necessary after the fact.
Yeah,
Yeah.
heavily involved in a murder. We'll leave it at that.
I think Bellinger's kind of like the same kind of guy. On the offensive end, he's a guy that's, been vocal against the Astros, kind of a turd. Obviously had some down years, but last year had a nice bounce back. Now, his StatCast numbers were way inflated. I mean, he wasn't nearly as good as the basic numbers were last year. But he's a guy that if the price dropped enough, he's a guy that could play center field and first base.
The thing with me, though, is with Bellinger, the whole reason you got Cabbage is to do exactly what you then go and sign Bellinger to do, right? Again, now, guy who's done it at a major league level and has won an MVP in Bellinger's is not the same as a rookie who you hope has a great season in Cabbage. But at the end of the day, that's the prototype, right? You've got a 30-30 guy who can play first base and multiple outfield positions. You're hoping that you found a gem or a diamond in the rough or whatever cliche you want to call in Cabbage. You don't give him that opportunity if you go sign Cody Bellinger.
Right. Yeah. But I think there is a price point where it becomes advantageous to make that move. And I don't know exactly where that price point is, but I mean, to me, you can make a move like Cabbage with the full intention of giving him every opportunity, and then having somebody like Bellinger's price drop to such a level where it's like, oh shit, okay, yeah, we'll take this guy. And so I don't know what that price point is. I mean, I think he was projected, to be well into the nine digits, for a contract. But I think that time has come and gone. I think he's a pillow contract guy. So the question is, how soft is that pillow?
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think his season last year didn't answer every question you wanted to see, right? Like you saw some good things, and you saw I'd like to see a little more, right? You saw what you'd like to see more of, but you didn't like. He's fixed. He's back. Let me get 10 years of that. It's not there. He still strikes out. He still is a guy who hits a lot of home runs and strikes out a lot. He plays a lot of different positions. He can play any outfield position, and he can play first base. That's a valuable asset to have. But I do think you're right. He needs to settle on a 1 year deal, or maybe a one with an option, or something along those lines. Because if he's still out there trying to get 3, 4, 5 years, it's not going to happen right now.
Yeah. So I think, I don't know if there's any other free agents that really tickle your fancy. I know I saw somebody on the message board that I frequent that was all up in arms because we didn't sign Randall to Gucic. And I was like, okay, I guess. I mean, he's
He's
an
an okay
100
player.
OPS plus guy. I mean, he's an average, hitter. But yeah, I mean, moving on to when you're looking at spring training, let me ask this question a couple of different ways, because, I can look at, who's got the most pressure on them, but I think we know the answer to that question. But the other question would be, for those guys that are playing behind him, what do they need to do to convince you that the job should be theirs?
So I'm assuming you're going to say the most pressure is on Jake Myers, right? Because he's got the
Yeah.
everyday opportunity. Um,
Yeah.
I think you got to just hit, right? I think if you can hit, I don't worry as much about center field defense right now, because if you can swing the stick, if you're Cabbage, for example, right? I want you to go there and just hit, because you can play left field and Chaz can play center. We will find a spot to make this work. But if you can go there and you can swing the stick and you can hit for power and you can hit for average, which is something that Jake Myers has not been able to do consistently, that's what I'm looking for. The defensive alignment, we'll figure it out. But if you could be a 275 or even a 265 hitter, show me something near 780 OPS, be a productive part of this ball club, be able to swipe a bag, which is something that if you don't play Jake Myers, you are losing, let's be real, a very good base runner, right? So if you're not going to play him out there, you've got to be able to give me that on the base pass, which Cabbage can. Those are the things you got to do. Get out there and hit, and be a good base runner. I don't really want to see much of Corey Julks unless all of a sudden this guy just took a huge jump forward in the offseason. But to me, it's Cabbage or bust for me. If it's not going to be Jake Myers, if he doesn't have what it takes, I think it means that Trey Cabbage really stepped up and took the job, and is forcing his hand to play in left field.
I want to include Durden in that conversation
Oh, that's fair. That's absolutely
because
fair.
he he had a really good spring last year. And so I don't know, you remember that one spring Luke Scott had
Yeah,
where he
made the
went like
team.
absolutely nuts?
Got him onto the
Yeah,
team.
and then Yeah, and then when he got here,
He had some
it took
service.
him
I
a
mean, he's a
while for him to get going.
250 hitter, gets you
Yeah,
20 bombs.
he had some good years, but he was a part of that Miguel Tejada trade, if I remember correctly, to Baltimore, and he really had his best years in Baltimore. The Tejada trade didn't bug me all that much at the time, except for the fact that we were not a competitive team. We were not a Miguel Tejada away from winning. And so basically you're just trading away young prospects for the hell of
That
trading
was
away
that
young
was classic.
prospects.
That was a classic Drake McLean move. Let's bring in an older, aging
Yeah.
name and tell everybody that I'm in, baby.
Oh
Let's
shit, look at
go.
us.
Yeah, that was Drayton. Spend a ton of money on Carlos Lee and nobody else. Bring in Randy Wolf at the trade deadline and try and tell me that you just signed fucking Cy Young. Like that is literally the stuff that went and got Aubrey Hoff and held a giant press conference. Do
Woo-hoo!
you
Ben
remember?
Zobrist.
Do you remember the press conference they held when they went and got Aubrey fucking Hoff? Like they were tooting their own horn at a level that I've never seen before. Everybody on the radio is like, "Who's it gonna be? Who do they?" This is a pretty big press conference, and they're like, "Aubrey Hoff," and we're just like, "What? This is the pomp and circumstance you bring out for Aubrey fucking Hoff?"
Well, it could have been Jeff Keppinger.
No, that was a free
But
agent signing. I mean, they did the same thing when they went and got Ty Wigington. They made it sound like they went and got a Brooks fucking Robinson, and it's Ty Wigington.
well, my favorite was sitting there listening to Ed Wade, and he was who was that third baseman? Pedro Gomez? No, it wasn't. Pedro was his first name.
Pedro
He's a
Feliz from the Phillies.
Felice, that's right. And he's sitting there talking about what a great RBI bat he is. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? He's a borderline Gold Glove third baseman. I would have touted that horn before I would have talked about how great of a hitter Pedro Feliz was. But no, so my concern is I don't want to make a decision on Myers based on 50 plate appearances in the spring. What I want to see is I don't necessarily want to see numbers. I want to see that he's not overmatched. I want to see good quality at bats because you and I both know we've watched enough of, say Alex Bregman or other hitters have terrific at bats that turn into outs. Kyle Tucker's first 2 years was like filled with that in April and May, where he'd hit the ball hard right at somebody. So what I want to see is I want to see you having quality at bats because I know eventually that's going to turn into something. But if you're sitting there getting K'd from a utility second baseman coming in to finish off a game, we might need to go in a different direction.
Absolutely. He needs to look like he belongs. He needs to look the part of a starting center fielder in the major leagues. At the end of the day, he has not done that yet. At most, Jake Myers has looked like a defensive replacement in a tight game. That's how he's, a pinch runner. That is all that he has shown me of why he would stay on a major league roster. To come in a late game and play good defense, to move Chaz to left, play Jake in center, or tight game, I need someone to come steal a bag. Hey, Myers, get in there and go run for Yiner. Something like that, right? That's what we've seen of Jake. That is what his roster utility is to me at this point. I need to see him step up and look the part of an everyday center fielder. Whether that is go in there and raking or just go in there and look like you fucking belong. Take swings at good pitches. Have a good eye. Don't try and press because your GM has come out and said you're the guy, right? So I think he's trying to make it so Myers doesn't feel the need to press in spring training. He can let it come to him and he can show the tools that he has, right? Because this is still a guy that James Click bet his whole fucking career on. He bet his job on this guy. So the tools are there. We still haven't seen everything after this injury, but the tools are obviously there that a guy with the acumen and track record that James Click had said, I'm betting the farm on this guy. Fire me if it doesn't work out.
So before we move on to the other sport we'd want to talk about, or other two sports we want to talk about in Houston, do you have any reservations about Dana Brown coming out and announcing this guy's going to be this guy's going to be that, without, Joe Espada, coming out and endorsing it, or,
Not
getting a
at all.
chance to make his own stamp.
Not at all. Because I truly believe for the first time since uh, probably like Hinch and Lunau were here that the front office and dugout are in sync. I think Dana Brown got his guy with Espada. I think they're on the same page. And I might even have a feeling that Espada knows Jake well enough to know and have that conversation with Dana to say, if you came out and gave him that public affirmation, that it would give him a boost of confidence. I don't doubt that conversation. I'm not saying it did, but it wouldn't surprise me if Espada and Brown talked, and what Brown got out of the conversation was like, you know what? If I come out and say this, it'll probably help Jake. It'll help be more relaxed in camp. He'll come in feeling like the guy. I like it. There are coaches who hang their players out to dry, right? Who go to the media and say, yeah, he missed a sign, he blew it, whatever you want to do. And then there are people who praise in public. And, so far it's looked to me like Dana's kind of one of those guys who will praise in public. He may not bite his tongue sometimes, and he's willing to speak the truth. But I do like him kind of saying, hey, we're going to play this guy here, or hey, we're going to give this guy a chance. Because it's a mental mindset for those guys in camp of pressing. I don't want you pressing in spring training. Because even if you show me a ton of numbers early on in spring training, what does it matter? These guys aren't in full shape yet. I want to see how you handle this position if you think it's yours. What do you do to prepare to be the starting center fielder on the defending AL West champion Houston Astros? What are you going to do every day to make sure that you are prepared to man center field at Minute Maid Park or wherever we're playing? That's what I want to see, right? What are you going to do to make sure that you're ready to be the starting center fielder? Because I think that's just as important as what his ABs look like, right?
Yeah, and I think I've said this before I think on the old podcast, but and many many times, where I don't really start sweating standings until Memorial Day, and really, and that's where when I started faulting Dusty Baker, it wasn't for starting Diaz from day one, or starting Chaz 150 games from day one. It was whenever you got to Memorial Day and you saw them raking, and you still wouldn't play them. To me, let's let things play out, move it past March, because early March these guys are playing double and triple A guys. So okay, you hit a dinger, congratulations. But I want to see what he does and sit there. You can flat out tell him this job is pretty much yours. I mean, barring you come out, hitting 100. The job's pretty much yours until Memorial Day, and then we'll kind of readjust from there.
Yeah, that's not a bad approach at all. I think that could be very effective. I think you could maybe see the best version of Jake if he's consistently in the lineup, and then at the same time you're not taking Chaz out of the lineup, because that's been the problem, right? If Jake played, that meant Chaz wasn't playing, or Jordan's not playing. There was always somebody that had to sit out so Jake could play. Now we need Jake to play almost, right? For this team to be their best with Jordan DHing, Jake Myers plays center field and steps up and becomes a 250, 260 hitter. That's the best scenario for this team.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And so, then the question then is that, who fits in afterwards? Who do you put in on the bench, for, like Cabbage playing multiple positions? Would you rather have a Julks as a fifth outfielder? Do you want, a second infielder in addition to DeBon? Where do you fill in, those into those bench slots? And that's kind of where I think this spring training is going to go in late March.
Yeah, I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. But speaking of, we're going to go one off season to another. Different parts of the off season, though, as the Texans are, I guess, rapidly approaching free agency might be the best term there. Scott, one of the things you mentioned previously on this podcast is Saquon Barkley. Texans had not a great running game for a large portion of the year last year. Barkley, a guy who could do a lot more than just run the football. And now all of a sudden he's out there following Nico Collins. He's following CJ Stroud. He's following Stingley. He's following all these guys on social media. What does that mean to you, Scott?
Saw what happened this last offseason. And so he wants to get, I think, as many teams interested as he possibly can to leverage, a contract. So then it becomes a situation of how many years do you give him? Where do you go? The problem I've always had with Barkley is that he hasn't been able to stay healthy. And so I am
See,
really
I feel
nervous
like
about
that's a
giving him.
misnomer. I feel like he played 16 games this year. He played 14 or 15 games last year. Really, in the NFL, he's only had one season that was catastrophic injury-wise. I think he's kind of on a similar path to CMC before being traded to San
Yeah,
Francisco.
that's true. And he has the same skill set. He's probably not nearly as good because I don't know if there's anybody in the game as good as McCaffrey at this point. But he is a guy that could be a poor man's McCaffrey. And so, I've heard other names being mentioned with the Texans. I've heard Josh Jacobs, but I don't know that I like Jacobs as much. I don't know that Jacobs is the weapon out of the backfield in the passing game
He's
that
still
Barkley
pretty
is.
good catching the ball. I think I'd prefer Saquon, but I wouldn't. I would not be upset about Jacobs. I think if you had them both available, I'm taking Saquon unless the price is just ridiculous. If I could bargain shop with Josh Jacobs, I'm taking it. But he's gonna want big boy money too.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, you're not getting out without paying either one of those guys 10 million a year. And so then the question is how many years? I don't know if you heard Jameis Winston's comments about Mike Evans. Did you catch that today?
I
Well,
didn't. No,
so
I
he was
didn't.
talking about how Mike Evans, so Mike Evans is from Galveston, as we know. And he says those guys who are born near water are just different.
Oh, I did see
The
that. Yeah.
water, the water it has no soul. It'll just take you wherever you want. So you got to be pretty mentally tough to grow up near water, as if he was born in a boat or something. As if, when he was a baby, they're just taking him out to the Gulf and throwing him out in the waves and saying, okay, you figure it out.
Isn't that what happened to you, Scott? Us born on the bayou folks?
No, I don't remember being thrown into the Gulf of Mexico. I remember going into the Gulf of Mexico, but I was never thrown in. That didn't happen.
I mean, when you just grow up under the constant fear of hurricanes, you just say fuck it, like. But no, I do think Jameis is right on the money on Mike Evans. I think he's just a different cat, and I don't think it's the water as much as Galveston.
Yeah, it was a
you
stupid
you
reason.
coached at G ball yourself, Scott. The good football players there, they got a little edge on them. If we're being honest,
Yeah,
there's some hardness on that football field for if you're
yeah,
good, right? There's obviously guys who suck and they got to make up a whole team. But if you're one of the guys who's getting out of Galveston ball on an athletic scholarship to go play at Texas A&M, you're hard.
yeah. No, and I have no problem with Evans as a player. It's just, gosh, I don't want to pay $20 million.
Yeah. I think Mike Evans is a fantastic wide receiver. I think he's going to make some other quarterback very happy. But his age and price tag to me don't line up with what this team needs to be doing. I honestly think Saquon's a better way to spend that money. You've got Tank Dell
So
coming back. You've got Nico Collins coming off the season of his life. There's a lot of wide receiver talent available in this draft. LSU's putting out three guys that could go in the first round theoretically. Washington's putting out one or two first round wide receivers. Ohio State's got one or two first round wide receivers. Yeah, I think you can get good pass catchers without paying $20 million a year. And also, one of the things about having an elite quarterback, Scott, is they take average to good pass catchers and they make them look great. There was a season where Jabbar fucking Gaffney was Tom Brady's best weapon on offense, and they still won their division. and they still went to an AFC Championship game with Jabbar Gaffney. Now, the next year they went out and signed Randy Moss, and Tom Brady set the whole fucking world on fire. But still, like great quarterbacks make good wide receivers look better. So
Yeah,
look what
yeah,
look what happened with Farrell Brown this year. He's never done shit anywhere ever in his life, and C.J. Stroud just made that guy a fat check. If he's smart, he comes back here on a good deal and has another good,
Oh,
hopefully
you mean
injury.
Noah?
I'm sorry,
You
Noah
mean
Brown. Noah
Noah
Brown.
Brown?
Yeah. Noah Brown. If he's smart, he comes back to the Texans and plays another year, and boom, you've got three good enough wide receivers right there with Tank Dell. Hopefully, you get a good tight end in the draft, or you re-sign the tight end that you had. And I think if you add Saquon, that's 60, 70 catches right there. Right? I don't want him necessarily pounding up the middle
Yeah,
all game. Spread him out. Get his touches differently the way the 49ers use McCaffrey.
yeah. I would like another wide receiver, but I'm open minded about how you get them. Like you might look at a guy. Man, I just had his name from Buffalo, Gabe Davis. He's probably maybe an $8 to $10 million guy, and he's probably going to be better than Noah Brown. The problem that you had on this team is that once Tank Dell went down, it was Nico Collins or Nico Collins. Robert Woods, you need to basically just cut him and get whatever you can get for his contract and, use whatever cap savings you can go elsewhere. If you look at this defense, I think this defense has like 5 or 6 starters returning. The rest of them are all free agents. So it may look like this team has 80 or $90 million to spend, and that might actually be true, but you're going to spend a bulk of that just putting a team together, much less, signing a bunch of studs. So I think prioritize one big time free agent. I mean, Chris Jones is probably going to break the bank, so you probably can't do him. But get one or two guys. But Evans, guys like that, you got to let him sign elsewhere.
Yeah, it's just not going to happen. At the end of the day, I don't see it. As you said, you're going to have to replace or at least re-sign more than half of this defense. And I think replace is kind of a likelihood for about half of those guys, right? Last year was a situation where you weren't exactly everybody's top free agent destination, right? Like you were getting a lot of 1 year prove it deals to guys who needed to revive their career, show that they still had it, or whatever reason. You sign guys to 1 year deals because no one wanted them long term. Well, now you have a top five quarterback who's young and people want to play with him, and he's literally all over the fucking planet right now. He's on, you know, he's all over Radio Row for the Super Bowl. He's on the Super Bowl commercial. He goes to the Cactus Jack game and wins the MVP of that game. And, I didn't love his swing, but he's an athlete to where, he could still poke a few out to right center. He should be just ripping homers to left, but that's a whole other issue. Then the very next night, he goes to the NBA All-Star Celebrity Game and drops 30 points. The guy's a phenomenal athlete. He's embedded in the community. He's spending an unbelievable amount of time hanging with his best bud at my alma mater, watching UH basketball games. He's been at the last two courtside with Tank Dell. I mean, this guy's living the life. And if you don't want to come play with him, if you don't want to come be a part of this vibe, you're fucking crazy. You're absolutely out of your mind if you don't see what Tank Dell and CJ Stroud have going on down here. And if you, at least as an offensive player, don't say, you know what, maybe I'll take like $5 million less a year to go have a chance to win a championship with CJ Stroud. It's just like we said with the Astros, right? If you're going to sign a long-term deal as an extension to stay, there has to be the consideration of I want to win. So if you're a receiver, or if you're a tight end, or if you're even a safety, and you look at the situations that are out there, and you could say, okay, I can go to Jacksonville, I can go to Tennessee, or I can go to Houston where they've got C.J. Stroud. Do I really believe in Will Levis? Probably not. Is Trevor Lawrence really what they said he is? Probably not. C.J. Stroud is, though. I'm going to sign that deal.
Yeah, and he's got Amber Rose as well. Maybe. We're not sure. Depends on the reports.
But I think, Scott, we should take C.J. Stroud's initiative and turn our attention to the glorious effort that the University of Houston has put out the last couple of home games. Good chance they move up to number one in the nation here pretty soon. They won last night against Iowa State. They won over the weekend against the University of Texas. I don't know how much of these games you've watched. The Fertitta Center might be a top 5 college basketball environment in the country right now.
Yeah, I mean, they are number two. UConn has had an impressive run. They're number one. And I think there's lots of prognosticators, probably an East Coast bias that think that they're the odds-on favorites to win, and maybe they are. I don't know. The problem I have with a UConn is how many tough games are they playing? I just don't know. I mean, they beat Marquette. They beat them like a drum. Marquette was ranked number 4, but how many good teams are in that conference? I mean, I'm looking right now. I'm looking at my phone. Watching my TCU Horned Frogs are playing Texas Tech 52-50 in the second half. All of these games in the Big 12 are close. And even when U of H blew out Iowa State, I mean, they were still a less than a 10-point game at the very end of it. These are all really good basketball teams. I mean, I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me if a team like Oklahoma State is at the bottom of the standings or a middle of the road team in any of the other major conferences. Would not surprise me at all. So to me, if you're a U of H fan, what you got to love is not only is U of H looking like they're going to win at least the regular season Big 12 championship, but that's going away the best conference in America. Going away.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. If you look at, West Virginia, Huggy always has his team ready to play. You beat them. You're 1-1 against Iowa State. Both teams have won at home. Another game coming against TCU, who's been a fantastic basketball team so far this year. You beat Texas Tech. You beat BYU when they were ranked number 21. You beat Kansas State. You beat Texas both times. You lost in Kansas, but they have to come to Houston. You beat Oklahoma State. You beat Cincinnati. You beat Texas again. You beat Iowa State. You played Baylor on Saturday. Again, that's going to be a huge matchup as Baylor's ranked number 11 in the country right now. I mean, in the last week alone, UH had a Saturday game against Texas, a Monday night game against the number 6 team, I think it is, in the country in Iowa State, and then you're going on the road to a number 11 team on Saturday to play Baylor. This is maybe this is blasphemous. I don't know, but I honestly believe, Scott, this might be a better basketball conference than the 1980s Big East. When you look at just the quality of teams that again, that's considered the height, right? When you look at college basketball, the 80s Big East, that's where people cut their teeth, right? That was hard-nosed, great quality basketball. I don't know how you could separate this conference from that one in any way. When you look at the quality of basketball that's being... You turn on TV on any night, put a Big 12 basketball game on, you're probably going to get a great fucking game right now. This league is stacked. Absolutely stacked with quality. There's going to be a team that doesn't make the tournament that could probably go out and win the American Athletic Conference or win the new Big East or win any of these mid-majors going away. But they're going to have, like you said, Oklahoma State... They'd be a tournament team in probably a lot of different conferences. But when you've got to play UH twice, Kansas twice, Texas twice, Iowa State twice, that's a really tough conference schedule. But if you are a tournament team, are you ever battle tested going into it?
Yeah, the debate between that and the 80s Big East has to start with that the Big East, I think back then, if my memory serves, was an 8-team conference. And so you're looking at now, starting next year, a 16-team conference. And, and you're including Arizona and Utah. You're including Arizona State, which is no slouch. You're including Colorado, which is usually not a good basketball school, but, we'll forgive them and give them Dion and kind of move on from there. But how many teams do you take in from a conference? I mean, I don't know what the record is, but you could easily make a case for 10 teams in the Big 12 without breaking a sweat. But can you justify a 68 team field with 10 teams from one conference? But that's going to be the landscape in basketball and in football is that, when you have the Big 10, which is going to be what I think 16 next year, you have the SEC, which is about at that level. You've got the Big 12, which is going to be 16. And then you have the ACC, which is, not quite as good, but it's going to have more teams. You're going to have
It's
four
still a good basketball
conferences.
conference. The AC still plays great basketball.
You're
You've got Duke, you've
yeah,
got
you're
North
going to have four
Carolina, Wake Forest.
you're going to have four conferences that have probably more than half the field. If
Yeah,
the field stays at 68.
I think it's going to go back to the point of if you don't win your conference tournament, you're not getting in if you're a mid-major, right? Those you've got to win your conference tournament, get your automatic bid, and other than that, if you're in the WAC, you're not getting a second bid. If you're in the Mountain Sky Conference or whatever it is, you're not getting two bids out of that conference. You're getting one, and then 40 of the 68 teams are going to come from those four conferences.
Yeah,
But you
I mean,
can't deny
and
it, right?
so
Like, how could you, when you look at the best 68 teams in the country, I think you and I could honestly say probably 40 of them are in those conferences. When you look at the fact that
yeah,
there's 65 teams in those four conferences.
so when you're a team like U of H and you can go through and you can have, was it 20 consecutive home victories?
I believe so. Maybe
Um,
21 now after Iowa
yeah,
State.
20, yeah, it's 20 or 21 consecutive home victories, and you're a top five team. You have spent more consecutive weeks in the top 25 AP poll than any team in college basketball with 80 consecutive weeks. I don't know if you knew that stat.
I didn't.
Um,
I didn't.
it's
That's a nice little tip of the cap.
so the debate that you have as a Cougar fan is is this the best Cougar run that there's ever been, or do you go back to the Guy V. Lewis days of Phi Slamma Jamma? Is that the best? And that's a hard debate because I think this team has had a longer sustained level of excellence,
That's what it is
but
there.
th- those teams obviously made it to back-to-back NBA NCAA finals, didn't win one, but they made it to three Final Fours in a row. So, if you want to pick those teams, and especially seeing what Drexler and Dream did as pros, afterwards, I certainly could tip my cap to that. But anybody that wants to pick this current group, I can't disagree with that either.
And what's funny to me too, especially with this year's group, this might be the fewest amount of NBA prospects we've had on a team in 3 or 4 years. But I might take this year's team over any of the other teams. And the reason why is because this year's team is led by Jamal Shed. Jamal Shed is the prototype of what you should want in a number one student athlete, number two point guard, and number three human being. Jamal Shed was brought into the national spotlight 3 years ago where UH lost a tough game against Arkansas. Team gets pissed, kind of trashed the sideline, dumped trash cans. Jamal Shed stays back and cleans it up and apologized to the janitors for his team that they made that mess. That's how people got to know Jamal Shed. And that would have been nice enough, right? If it was this cool story of a bench player. But now Jamal Shed is the best point guard in the entire country. He is, to me, so much like Fred VanVleet. It's unbelievable. Last night he gave you 26 and 6 because that's what the team needed. But if you need 10 and 15 assists, he'll give you that. And let's not forget, he's the best defender night in and night out on the floor. He plays probably 35 of 40 minutes, and his effort level is unbelievable. Jamal Shed is everything to this basketball team. He is everything that this program is about. He is a guy who has worked his tail off. Most UH Cougars stay for 4 years, as has he, and that's been the culture that we've built. You get better every year, as Jamal Shed has. Your defensive buy-in is at an all-time high level, as Jamal Shed's is, and you're going to make smart basketball plays when you're on the court or you're coming out, as Jamal Shed does. So this team, I think, is the best all-around basketball team we've had in this run, simply because this is the best point guard we've ever had. Dijon Giroux, phenomenal athlete, could get to the rim at will, was a very good, long, lanky defender, but he made some stupid decisions with the basketball. Marcus Sasser is in the NBA right now, playing on the Detroit Pistons with another Cougar, Jarris Walker, who is also a first-round pick. But both of those guys couldn't get the job done. Sasser had a tendency to go cold and rely too much on his step-back junker. Jarris Walker didn't finish well enough for a guy that was his size. Those are two NBA first-round picks on a team last year that couldn't get past the Sweet 16. This is the best roster that we've ever had as far as our chance to go into the tournament. We're battle-tested. Playing in the Big 12 has done that, and you've got the best point guard in the country, and you and I both know in March, guard play is everything.
Oh yeah, and what I have to hope is I hope that the NIL makes it possible for more guys to stay all 4 years. Because particularly when you look at the league and you look at the NBA, guys are coming out way too early. They're spending 2 and 3, maybe 4 years on the bench. Like you remember Jermaine O'Neal, going out of high school, and he was trash for like maybe a solid 5 years, turned into a pretty good player, when all was said and done. But it took him so long. And so to me, if you can sit there and say, hey, we'll have this random car dealer over here give you $100,000, to stay in school, play 4 years. What a better place to learn how to play the game than the Big 12. I mean, if you're not on your game, they're going to pick your pocket and eat your lunch.
And how about the fact, too, if you're a guy, let's say you're Jamal Shed, right? And you're a mid to late first-round draft pick. That's a tough spot to find yourself in the NBA because it's tough to find minutes, right? If you're a top 3 or 4 pick, you're kind of viewed as the savior of your franchise, and you're expected to come in and do some pretty great things. But if you're those mid to late first-round picks, it's maybe you're a rotational guy. You got to try and find your way. But if you played 4 years of Big 12 basketball and you played 4 years of Kelvin Sampson basketball, you're going to be an elite defender. And you're going to find a way to make an impact no matter what your minutes are your first year in the NBA. And you're probably going to get more minutes because of it, because you can be relied upon when you're out there to make smart basketball plays.
Yeah, I mean, the guy I would compare him to and what the hope would be for an NBA career would be, former Rocket favorite Shane Battier. Shane Battier was, played for Duke, scored, 20 plus a night at Duke. Never was that player in the NBA. Was never that player. But he was a hellacious defender. I mean, he would routinely be on the other team's best, wing offensive player, whether he's guarding a 2 or a 3. So, Shed, I could see, like, if you're looking at the Rockets picking late lottery, give me a nice backup point guard like that. Give me a guy that can, learn from Fred Van Vliet, play me a good 10, 15 minutes a night. Sign me up for that.
That's what I'm thinking as well. I think as Amen Thompson grows, maybe he's not a point guard. Maybe he's a slashing 2. Maybe that's the way that you move off of Jalen Green is Amen Thompson becomes your other wing player, or you play, it just gives you options. There's nothing wrong with having a lot of good young talent, and adding a guy like Jamal Shed automatically makes your culture a lot better. But, Scott, it's kind of getting to that point of the show where we like to talk about some of the good things that have happened this week, and, it's been a good week for the most part. I'll go ahead and lead us off. I had a chance to start the new season of the Lakeside Community Theater's plays this year, 2024. Last year was interesting, to say the least, Scott. We had some discussions on our previous podcast about some of the plays my wife and I saw, and they were weird. They were out there. Only 1 or 2 was really well done. But I wanted to feel sophisticated. I want to feel like a guy who supports the arts. I wanted to be able to tell people I go to plays. My wife and I go to the theater. And so I renewed my subscription or my membership, my season tickets for another year. We said we'll give it one more year. So first play of the season is called It's Only a Play. and it's a play about a play. And I'm like, yeah, this could go one of two ways here. But I gotta say, they absolutely knocked it out of the water. Went in with minimal expectations. Even had a couple cocktails, which I don't normally drink. I decided to have a couple cocktails before the play just to really lube it up and make sure I was going to have a good time. And it was so well done. It was topical. They changed the script up a little bit to include some modern age political humor. There was a great one-liner about having to sit next to Lauren Boebert at a play and how it was distracting. So they really did a great job. I enjoyed every minute of it. If you're in the DFW area, and I'm in the Colony, it's the Lakeside Community Theater, running for 2 more weeks, and it was so well done. Couldn't have enjoyed it anymore. And they give away free wine with your ticket as well, so you can get loaded in the audience.
Yeah, that's always. So, did you ever see The Naked Gun?
I don't know if I've seen every one of them, but I've seen enough of them to be able to probably go along with what you're saying.
So there was a scene where it's kind of one of those montage scenes where he's going out with Priscilla Presley. And I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Platoon or know about the movie Platoon, but they're walking out and you can see the Platoon's on the marquee and they're busting out laughing. And so you're like, I don't think that was the correct reaction to that play. We went to our first play of the calendar year. Our season starts in September, so we've been to a couple of different plays at the Alley Theater. This one was like a platoon. Everybody died. It was just, and you just walk out. You either start crying or you got to laugh. It's just one of the two things. There's no, but they do a good job, and they give us incentives like we also give them over $1,000 a year on top of our season tickets. So we get our name in the playbill as a donor.
Ooh, I get my
But
name in the playbill just because there's only 12 season ticket holders for the Lakeside Community Theater, so I get my name right
there you
there. And
go.
because I start
There
with a
you go.
C, right at the top, baby. That Costello last
There
name.
you go.
My wife was previously a Y before we got married. Now she's at the front of the alphabet. Had to get that shit taken care of.
Unfortunately, we're only in the $1,000 category, and so there are people that give like $25,000, $50,000, and stuff like that. So they get first bills in the playbill, but that's fine. All right, so somebody or something stuck in your craw this week. So what would that be?
Yeah, for me, it's actually gonna be someone we've mentioned before, and I'm gonna pair it with someone we've never talked about before. Rob Manfred and Nike. The Major League Baseball uniform is a classic fucking look. Every kid that has ever played Little League, their whole life, has dreamed of getting the stitched jersey, of feeling the patches, of knowing what that Major League Baseball jersey feels like. And Nike has completely ruined it. They have taken what we have done for 100 years, they've chewed it up, and they shit it out in a way that's absolutely awful. Not only is it all just screen printed on there now, the lettering is terrible. And I saw a picture today of Justin Verlander last year and Justin Verlander today. Last year it went shoulder blade to shoulder blade. Not really a lot of curvature to it. This year it goes from like armpit to armpit, and it's like fucking reading Rainbow of Justin Verlander. These jerseys are absolutely awful. The Players Union has already tried to stop them from being put into use before the regular season. What are we doing? What are you doing? If you're trying to change the baseball jersey, that's a problem. The jersey was fine. We as fans already know we get a shittier jersey than what the players get. We don't want the players to get that same shitty jersey too. You worked your whole life for that first time as a rookie breaking camp to put the jersey on with the stitched letters. And to take that away from those guys, I know it's a minor thing, but they look fucking terrible.
Oh, I don't know if you heard the good news, though. Rob Manfred is retiring
That is good news, but it's in like 5 years.
in 2029. You know, my
Hey,
number
hey,
one
Scott, I am
prerequisite.
also going to announce my retirement. Looking at like 2060, but I just want to let you know right now that I do plan on retiring one day, probably around 2060. But I'm going to announce it on the show that one day I will retire.
Yeah, solid call there. And you know, my number one prerequisite for commissioners of any sport is that you need to be a fan of the sport. And I'm not sure if Rob Manfred loves baseball. I just don't know. I mean, and you know, I've heard people like mention guys like George Will, and I'm not a George Will fan, but at least George Will likes baseball. So, you know, I don't know who's next after Rob Manfred. I mean, I certainly hope that 5 years is enough of an off ramp where they can find a successor, you know, give him a shot. But yeah,
It's
that's
going to be
rough.
Hunter Biden. He's bringing his laptop.
Gold, pure gold.
Thank you.
All right. So, speaking of the political world, I don't know how many of you managed to watch Tucker Carlson's little tidbit there, where he interviewed Vladimir Putin and made a visit to Russia. But on behalf of most thinking Americans, I'm just going to sit there and say, Tucker, go ahead and stay. We'll consider you a dissident, and you know we'll do the solid of not killing you, which is something that Vladimir Putin doesn't offer his dissidents. But you know, here's the funny thing. So he's sitting there interviewing Vladimir Putin, and I don't know if you saw any of the clips from the interview.
I actually consumed it in what I would consider the best way to possibly do so, and that was listening to the Knowledge Fight episode on it, where Dan listened to it and then cut the relevant clips and then spent 3 hours talking about it and why Tucker Carlson was the worst possible person to do that interview.
Well, so do you know whose fault it was for World War II? Did you catch that?
I didn't. I don't know. America, probably.
No, no, Poland.
Oh, they should.
Well, and so you could watch Tucker Carlson, and what's so funny is that he can't even fake it. Like you look at his face, and his face says, "What the fuck?" But you know, out loud, he's like, "Oh yeah, yeah,
I
I
mean,
could
no,
see
because the
that.
problem
Yeah, I
is,
can see."
the biggest problem is Tucker Carlson has such a pro-Russia propaganda on his regular show that he's built himself up as the Russia guy. He cannot offer any pushback on anything that Putin says, lest he have to change his entire fucking narrative that he spent 2 years creating. He spent 2 years telling everyone that Putin is a genius. He's loves God. He knows all this other. He's a strong conservative. He's misjudged by America. And he, numerous times in that interview, wanted to offer pushback, but literally cannot because of the way that he's positioned himself as a journalist for years.
Oh, sure, but you know, he went to a grocery store. So you know, at this grocery store, I'm just you know going to set this up for our listeners and viewers. You can go into this grocery store and you can put a coin into a shopping cart. And this coin allows you to use the shopping cart.
Yeah, I love
And if
Aldi
you
too.
return, yeah, if you return the shopping cart, you get the coin back. And it's like, this is so amazing. And I'm like, it's Aldi.
I shop at Aldi every week,
It's
Tucker, you
Aldi.
dumb fuck. If I didn't have to have someone go get my groceries for me like he does, you might learn this. So those of us who want the best prices go to Aldi.
Well, and then he sits there and talks about the fact that, you know, look, it's an escalator just for your cart. And I'm like, yeah, I've seen that in a Target. So, you know, and then he's bragging about the fact that look, a week's groceries cost only $100. And it's like, yeah, you dumb shit. The average Russian's making 200 a week. So that's half their weekly pay is going to the grocery bill.
And look at your
Doesn't sound
dumb
to me
fuck
like,
Republican friends who are the reason why this shit costs so much because they're fucking inflating the prices of everything. Fucking asshole. I hate.
yes.
There are some people that, like, I know it would do no good to walk up, to tell them they're an asshole, and to punch them right in the face, right? Alex Jones, Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, all those guys. Because that's what they want. They want to be able to come in the next day and be like, the left is out to get me. But goddamn, wouldn't it feel good, Scott, to just fucking clean cock Tucker right in the face?
Yeah, he's got a punchable face, especially when he has that kind of like, I can't even do it. I don't know how he does it. That, kind of puzzled, I smelt a fart kind of face that he produced.
Vladimir
I don't know.
Putin is listed as one of the worst people in the world. But why do
Oh,
they
well,
talk? I can't even. His voice is such a. Yeah, he deserves a nut punch worse than anyone. Because he just gets to live his life. And what's worse is he thinks he's just playing a part. Right? He thinks he is just playing this role, much like an actor, and the world is his stage. And then he turns off the camera and he gets go back to being a dad or a husband or rich billionaire fuckhead, whatever he wants to live his life as. And he doesn't think about the shitstorm that he has literally created. He doesn't think about the destruction that he has created. He just thinks about the fucking checks he's cashed. And if you look at his text messages that got uncovered in the Fox News lawsuit, you can see that. He's a fucking piece of shit, and it's why he doesn't work at Fox News anymore.
Well, yeah, and to me, the whole man of the people bit, the whole I'm fighting against the establishment. Do you know where, do you know who his parents are?
I don't. I'm sure they're rich.
They're the heirs of the Swanson, uh, TV dinner
Mm.
conglomerate. So this is a guy that was
Pulled
born a
himself up by
millionaire.
his bootstraps.
Yeah, really hard. When you got the Swanson money, rolling around.
He got that
So
fucking
this is.
TV dinner money.
I mean, so what the hell,
Could you? Like,
Hat
I
tip
would
to.
love to like be on a date and like be like, hey, price is no object tonight, baby. I got that chicken finger money. I got that frozen. I got that frozen tendy money. You get whatever you want.
Yeah, hat tip to John Oliver for doing a whole bit on Tucker Carlson. How he got his start. Especially with the bow ties. In his first bit on national TV, he was at gosh, what was he writing for the Daily Standard? And he was literally the only guy in the office, and they needed somebody to stand in on television, and so he was the guy. That is the biggest I am white privilege story that you could ever think.
Very much so. Very, very much so. But that's going to be it for you here this week, Scott. Great scumbag. Tucker Carlson is always a giant piece of shit, and that interview was a giant waste of time. So I'm glad that we were able to bring that to people's attention because it really is, I don't know, it's really pretty bad, I feel like, at the end of the day.
Oh, sure. And anytime we can bring a few facts, for the people, that's what we love to do.
It sure is. But like I said, that's probably going to be it for us here this week. It's been a fantastic week as we had a chance to spend some time with all of our listeners. But we will be back at it again next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. We'll see you all next week.